Hello? Hello, fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome to the stream. Welcome back to Storytime Saturday. It is Storytime Saturday number 32. Really? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. 32. We're reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. You might notice that my mic is quieter. I was kind of watching my older videos and my old video. I've been watching my previous streams a little bit, and I realized that my mic was really loud. So I turned it down a little bit. I used to have my mic way up because I used to use the mic on my webcam, and so like it needed to be loud because it's a little further away. But this is right up next to me, so it doesn't need to be quite so loud. So I apologize if you're a headphone wearer, and I have made this experience uncomfortable for you. Also, side note, and completely unrelated, I'm wearing a Powerpuff Girl t-shirt. It is the same t-shirt that I wore the last time I streamed a Storytime Saturday, but it has been washed since then. I am wearing matching, well, I can't see it, matching shorts, because I'm just that cool. Yeah. Just in case anybody else noticed. I'm sure nobody noticed that I wore the same shirt 2 streams in a row. That's fine. I noticed, because I notice those kind of things. Because I'm, watching myself, and I have to critique everything I do. I critique the words I use, my word usage as well. I'm just like, Erica, I don't think you mean that word. I think you should have used a different word in that place. Which, that sentence sounded awful already, now that I'm thinking about it. You should have used a different word in that sentence. But that might just be because I'm a writer and I pay attention to the words that everybody uses. I'm just like, I don't think you know what that word means. Or, you could have used a better word there. I'm constantly, not to make you feel, like uncomfortable when you're talking to me, but I pay attention to the words that people use, and I'm just like, words matter. Words matter, okay? I think that's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, welcome. Especially if you're new, please feel free to comment in the chat. I'll be reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapters 5 and 6. It's not just me reading, it's a discussion. So please feel free to join the discussion in the chat. Or in the comments. If you're watching this and this isn't live anymore, please feel free to join the discussion anyway, because I respond to those comments. And if you're not a subscriber, click subscribe. It's free and effortless. It requires nothing from you, just a click of a button, and it's super, super helpful to me. So if you feel like helping out a stranger, someone who could become a friend, please click the subscribe button if you want to. And click the like button. That is also effortless and helping out a friend. It's the thumbs up button below the screen if you're not familiar with how YouTube works. It helps the YouTube algorithm. The more likes a video gets, the more likely it is to push it in front of other eyes. Other things that I say. Also, when you click the subscribe button, a bell icon pops up next to it, and that's the notification bell. You can choose how often you get notified. You can get notified, you can not get notified, but I would really appreciate it if you would have me turn on notifications for my videos and my live streams, so you can be notified whenever I live stream and upload. So I kind of been talking about uploads lately, how I haven't been uploading because I've been working on this really big project, but I'm changing things around. So the way I do free time and my scheduling and stuff, I used to only give myself about an hour or 2 hours depending on my work schedule, an hour or 2 hours dedicated to YouTube every other day. On my workout days, actually. And except for live streams. Live streams are always Friday and Saturday. Live stream is kind of a different thing from doing YouTube. I would spend the first half of that hour or 2 hours doing housekeeping stuff, making sure that my playlists are good, looking at my page, editing my videos, editing my streams, cutting out the intermission and the starting soon screen, and changing the titles and make sure it has a good thumbnail, all those little housekeeping things. And then the second half, I work on what I'm going to upload. I have only been working on this big project that's taking me months to do. But now, during that time, I'm going to work on smaller projects where I can upload more regularly. And then I have a different allotted time during my free time where I will work on the bigger projects. So I'm hoping to upload more often. I probably have lost a couple of subscribers because I don't do as much Sims content as I used to. Don't worry, I'm not done with the Sims. I'm bringing the Sims back, I promise. I'm working on a speed build right now, and I'm going to continue my Let's Plays. I'm going to go back to that stuff, I promise. So yeah, I'm trying. That's the moral of the story. I'm trying. But also, I live stream, if you didn't figure that out already. I live stream every weekend, Friday and Saturday, although it's been a little spotty over the summer because summer is really busy for me. But on Fridays, I stream playing video games. Lately, I've been playing the Halo series because I'd never played it before, and I wanted to give it a try. But we're going to be taking a break from Halo, and we're going to start playing A Plague's Tale next week. It is a really good game. I was talking during my Halo stream last night about my channel and kind of how it really looks like the videos I make and the things I do don't really go together. They're not related. A lot of people who do YouTube, they do one kind of content. It's just commentary, just book reviews, just cooking, just makeup, just video games, just comedy, whatever, where I do a bunch of other things. Like, people would play a certain kind of video game. There's people who only play The Sims. Well, I do lots of things. I read, I play Halo, I play The Sims, I play mystery games. I do whatever the heck I feel like. It's probably not the most successful thing, but I've decided I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. So there. But that being said, there is, I'd like to think, a theme for my channel. Of course, it's very Harry Potter focused in one way, but it's not just Harry Potter, of course. I'm a writer, and so I really enjoy storytelling. And so the games I play and the books I read and everything I do, for the most part, has to do with storytelling. Not exclusively. I don't think everything in The Sims is about storytelling, but, I mean, that's kind of the direction I go in. So that being said, check out my live stream next Friday. Not sure what time. I'll get back to that. But I'm going to be playing A Plague's Tale because it is, if you like a game that has good story, that is it. A Plague's Tale is so good. And if you're not a story person, it's still a good game. It is one of the best games I've ever played. Great story, great characters, great gameplay. If you're really into medieval France and the bubonic plague, and if you're a history buff, there's a lot of historical accuracy in it. If you're like supernatural stuff, there's also a supernatural twist to it that's great. And the music is awesome. If you want to play just for the graphics and the music alone, please do, because it is amazing. And the reason why I'm playing A Plague's Tale: Innocence, that's the name of the game, the full title, is because the sequel's coming out October 18th. I think it's the 18th. Either it comes out the 18th or I'm streaming it the 18th. I'm not streaming it the day it comes out, but I am streaming it the Friday after it comes out. I'm really excited. So, but I want to play the first one first. So join me for that. I'll be playing somewhere around 4 chapters a stream, something like that. It'll be a good time. And then I'm also streaming Storytime Saturdays, which is what this is here today, where I read, and I'm currently reading Harry Potter, of course. So if you want to know when I stream, because my stream schedule kind of changes every week, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon. If you want to support me, that'd be awesome. Just $5 a month. Link in the description. But also, as I said, I am a writer, and I post pieces on there. I post essays and poetry and short stories and other stuff on there. And while in order to read everything on there, you would have to become a patron for $5 a month. There's also free stuff on there, and it's real easy. You just follow the link, you just go and you just scroll down the page and find stuff that you can click on that look interesting to you, and just click on it and read it. Yeah, there's free stuff on there too, so please check it out. And please leave a like or a heart or whatever it is on whatever piece it is, so I know that you read it and enjoyed it. Or didn't enjoy it. Please tell me. If you didn't enjoy it, please let me know that too. That also works. Also in the description is my TikTok and my Instagram. I have a couple videos on there, not many, but I plan on posting more stuff, so please follow me there as well. Okay, I think that's good introductory stuff. Yeah, I think that's everything. So we should get started. First, we'll do a recap of chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 was the invitation. Harry gets invitation by the Dursleys, by the Weasleys in the mail. He gets invited to go to the Quidditch World Cup with them, and they things aren't going great at the Dursleys. They're having to diet because Dudley needs to lose some weight, according to the school nurse. There's drama between Harry and the Dursleys because they don't want to encounter the Weasleys at their home, but that's what's going to happen in the next chapter, which was chapter 4, Back to the Burrow, which I don't even think we see the Burrow at all. It's just the Weasleys basically trying to come down the Dursleys' electric fireplace. It's not a real fireplace. They blocked it up and they put an electric one in front of it, and so they don't realize that it's fake, and so they basically blast through the wall and destroy the Dursleys' living room. And we just left off with well, we don't know. Well, we do know. I mean, if you've read this before, you do know that Fred had accidentally dropped a Tung toffee on the ground, and Dudley, who's been eating, what was he eating? Cottage cheese and what'd they have for breakfast? I want to say pomegranate. It's not a pomegranate. Grapefruit. He's been eating nothing but grapefruit and cottage cheese, sees candy, and immediately puts it in his mouth. And so now his tongue is literally falling out of his mouth. And there's consequences for that. That we are going to see in a little bit. Okay, cool. And that's where we are now. Chapter 5. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Hope you have a drink. I have mine in my nice Harry Potter mug. It's milk, nothing special. I'm trying to cut back on sugar a little bit. So that's what I have. Alright. Chapter 5. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Harry spun faster and faster, elbows tucked tightly to his sides, blurred fireplaces flashing past him, until he started to feel sick and closed his eyes. Then, when at last he felt himself slowing down, he threw out his hands and came to a halt in time to prevent himself from falling face forward out of the Weasleys' kitchen fire. "Did he eat it?" said Fred excitedly, holding out a hand to pull Harry to his feet. "Yeah," said Harry, straightening up. "What was it?" "Tung toffee," said Fred brightly. "George and I invented them, and we've been looking for someone to test them on all summer." The tiny kitchen exploded with laughter. Harry looked around and saw that Ron and George were sitting at the scrubbed wooden table with two red-haired people Harry had never seen before. though he knew immediately who they must be. Bill and Charlie, the two eldest Weasley brothers. We're meeting Bill and Charlie for the very first time. Yay! I was about to say. No, we don't. We don't need to. Oh. We meet Bill in Deathly Hallows as well. But he's also in the sixth one. I thought he was going to be part of our Harry Potter pyramid, but he's not. Yes, that was awesome. I don't want to spoil it, though. I'll say this. Last year, actually, in exactly a year from next week, I went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. And I got to see Diagon Alley for the first time. I've been there before. I've been to Universal before, so I saw Hogsmeade, but I'd never seen Gringotts and all that before. So I got to ride the Gringotts ride for the very first time, and I rode it a good few times. It's good. It's too short. The ride is way too short, but it is really good. If you ever go, I encourage you to, even if you're a single rider, go through the regular line. Even if it's longer, it's always longer than the single rider line. Because the single rider line, you cut through the cool stuff. Because, of course, on the way to the ride, they have set dressing. You actually get to go through Gringotts. You get to go through the lobby and through the vaults and through all kinds of cool things. And they really dressed it up, made it real nice. But if you go through the single riders line, you kind of skip all of that. You see some of it, but you skip the good parts, right? And you don't get to go to the elevator. There's a part where you get to the elevator and you get like an introductory video, and it really gets you into the story of why you're in Gringotts, why you're going on this adventure, right? You don't get to see that stuff if you're a single rider. I encourage you to see the introductory video, because we get some familiar faces, and I don't want to spoil who's in it, but like you just get a fun video with the actual actors from the films, and it's just really fun. So if you ever go and see it, I really encourage you to do that. Okay. "How are you doing, Harry?" said the nearer of the two, grinning at him, holding out a large hand, which Harry shook, feeling calluses and blisters under his fingers. This had to be Charlie, who worked with dragons in Romania. Charlie was built like the twins, shorter and stockier than Percy and Ron, who were both long and lanky. Fred and George are short and stocky? When have we ever... Did it say that when we were first introduced to them? Because I never envisioned them that way. Huh. Of course. Did I watch... I saw the movies before I read this book, so the movies always shaped the way I saw the characters. So I guess I wouldn't see them that way, because that's not how they are in the movie. He had a broad, good-natured face, which was weather-beaten and so freckly that he looked almost tanned. His arms were muscular, and one of them had a large, shiny burn on it. Bill got to his feet, smiling, and also shook Harry's hand. Bill is so cool. Bill is awesome. Bill came as something of a surprise. Harry knew that he worked for the Wizarding Bank Gringotts, and that Bill had been head boy at Hogwarts. Man, I can't get over how cool this dude is. Harry had always imagined Bill to be an older version of Percy, fussy about rule-breaking and fond of bossing everyone around. However, Bill was, there was no other word for it, cool. He was tall, with long hair that he had tied back in a ponytail. He was wearing an earring with what looked like a fang dangling from it. Bill's clothes would not have looked out of place at a rock concert, except that Harry recognized his boots to be made, not of leather, but of dragon hide. So cool! They could have dressed him up a little more like that in the film. I don't know why they didn't. But I'm not unhappy with the way they made Bill in the film. I really like the actor they chose for him. His name escapes me, but I do know that he's Brendan Gleeson's nephew. Yes, the actor who plays Mad-Eye Moody is the uncle of the actor who plays Bill Weasley in the movies. I think that's how they're related. They're related. I'm pretty sure it's uncle and nephew, but they're related. I don't know exactly how, but they're related. Before any of them could say anything else, there was a faint popping noise, and Mr. Weasley appeared out of thin air at George's shoulder. He was looking angrier than Harry had ever seen him. "That wasn't funny, Fred," he shouted. "What on earth did you give that Muggle boy?" "I didn't give him anything," said Fred with an evil grin. Oh, another evil grin. "I just dropped it. It was his fault he went and ate it. I never told him to." I'm going to do some fact-checking. I'm going to make sure I'm right about them being related. Sometimes I have these little tidbits in my head, and I'm just like, where did I get that information? I better be right about that. I need the actor, please. Yes. Where's... Man, he's really good looking. He is an attractive dude. William Weasley. That's not his name. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce that. Domhnall Gleeson. Is it an Irish name? Domhnall Gleeson. Man, he's an attractive dude. Yes, he's an Irish actor. Yes. Brendan Gleeson is also Irish. He's in a really Irish film coming up. Can I... Is Wikipedia gonna help me? I don't know where I would find it. Oh, he's the son! Oh, he's the son, not the nephew. My bad. Good thing I fact-checked. They are related. He is the son, not the nephew. Why did I hear nephew? Where did I hear that? Am I thinking of somebody else? I might be. It's his son, not nephew. Cool, though. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Glad I did some fact-checking. Nope, we are not that far in the book, Erica. What are you doing? Okay. Alright, back to the story. "You dropped it on purpose," roared Mr. Weasley. "You knew he'd eat it. You knew he was on a diet." Really? Oh, yeah. Harry probably said that in the last chapter. "How big did his tongue get?" George asked eagerly. "It was 4 feet long before his parents would let me shrink it." So you did shrink it. Okay. Well, I imagine. You didn't get it cut off at the doctor. Harry and the Weasleys roared with laughter again. "It isn't funny," Mr. Weasley shouted. "That sort of behavior seriously undermines wizard-muggle relations. I spent half my life campaigning against the mistreatment of muggles, and my own sons—" "We didn't give it to him because he's a muggle," said Fred indignantly. "No, we gave it to him because he's a great bullying git," said George. "Isn't he, Harry?" "Yeah, he is, Mr. Weasley," said Harry earnestly. I don't think it's funny either. Actually, I'm not as upset about it as Mr. Weasley is, but I'm just like, did you really? The situation was awful enough. Did you really have to do that? But I do see where Mr. Weasley's coming from, and that is, that's not a way to treat somebody, even a bully. Sorry. That's not the point, raged Mr. Weasley. "You wait until I tell your mother." "Tell me what?" said a voice behind them. Oh. Mrs. Weasley had just entered the kitchen. She was a short, plump woman with a very kind face, though her eyes were presently narrowed with suspicion. "Oh, hello, Harry, dear," she said, spotting him and smiling. Then her eyes snapped back to her husband. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mr. Weasley hesitated. Oh, he didn't really mean... Oh, no! Harry could tell that however angry he was with Fred and George, he hadn't really intended to tell Mrs. Weasley what had happened. Well, it's too late now. There was a silence while Mr. Weasley eyed his wife nervously. Then two girls appeared in the kitchen doorway behind Mrs. Weasley. One, with very bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth, was Harry's and Ron's friend, Hermione Granger. So this book pays particular attention to Hermione's front teeth. I think it's mentioned in the first book too, but whenever we read descriptions about Hermione, we don't really hear about her front teeth. It's important in this book, and I actually talk about it in my Harry Potter essay, which you can read if you become a patron, link in the description. I wrote an essay analyzing the Harry Potter films and comparing them to the books. I argue that Hermione has a real coming-of-age kind of transformation in the movie. And it's in the book, too, even though it happens a little differently. I know they don't give Hermione large front teeth in the movie. Well, I won't give all the details. I want you to actually read the essay. But in the book, she has a transformation, too, through her front teeth. It mentions her front teeth here. And then again, later on, she's going to get hit with the Engorgio spell, I think. And her front teeth are going to grow. And then she's going to go to the nurse. And the nurse is going to do kind of a reversal spell to make them shrink back. And Hermione, and then her teeth go back her teeth are normal after that. And when Harry sees her at the ball, and he doesn't recognize her at first, he looks at her smiling. He's like, "Wait a minute, your teeth they're normal." And she's like, well, first of all, she says, "Well, yeah, I wasn't going to keep those fangs that Malfoy gave me," because Malfoy was the one who hit her with the spell. And Harry's like, "No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, they're not your normal. They're our normal," essentially is what he says. And Hermione's like, "Oh, yeah, well, she's been trying to get her parents to let her do that spell because her parents are dentists. They were uncomfortable with her using that spell, so they never let her do it. But she went to the nurse, and the nurse was doing it, and she explains that the nurse kept tweaking her teeth, and she said to tell her to stop when they were the way they were before. And Hermione just let her continue a little further until they were smaller than they were before. But anyway, part of that is Hermione never really cared about her appearance before. In the first 3 books, she doesn't pay attention to it hardly at all. And now all of a sudden she cares about the size of her teeth. It's part of her growing up. You know, teenagers care more about their appearance than children do. She wants to be attractive, and so that shows by her front teeth. I'll probably mention this again when that topic comes up later. And I will say, it's significant that it's mentioned here in this book and not any other book, because the purpose of her front teeth is to show her transformation into womanhood. Yeah, and I explain that in my essay. Check it out on my Patreon. The other, who was small and red-haired, was Ron's younger sister, Ginny. Both of them smiled at Harry, who grinned back, which made Ginny go scarlet. She had been very taken with Harry ever since his first visit to the Burrow. Even before then, let's be honest. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mrs. Weasley repeated in a dangerous sort of voice. "It's nothing, Molly," mumbled Mr. Weasley. "Fred and George just... But I've had words with them." "You're not helping." "What have they done this time?" said Mrs. Weasley. "If it's got anything to do with Weasley's wizard Wheezes..." "Why don't you show Harry where he's sleeping, Ron?" said... Wait, blah, 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 blah. Let me read that again. "Why don't you show Harry where he's sleeping, Ron?" said Hermione from the doorway. "He knows where he's sleeping," said Ron. "In my room. He slept there last... We can all go," said Hermione pointedly. "Oh," said Ron, cottoning on. "Right." "Yeah, we'll come too," said George. "You stay where you are," snarled Mrs. Weasley. Harry and Ron edged out of the kitchen, and they, Hermione and Ginny, set off along the narrow hallway and up the rickety staircase that zigzagged through the house to the upper stories. "What are Weasley's wizard Wheezes?" Harry asked as they climbed. Ron and Ginny both laughed, although Hermione didn't. Mum found this stack of order forms when she was cleaning Fred and George's room, said Ron quietly. Great long price lists for stuff they've invented. Joke stuff, you know. Fake wands and trick sweets, loads of stuff. It was brilliant. I never knew they'd been inventing all that. We've been hearing explosions out of their room for ages, but we never thought they were actually making things, said Ginny. We thought they just liked the noise. Only most of the stuff, well, all of it really, was a bit dangerous, said Ron. And, you know, they were planning to sell it at Hogwarts to make some money, and Mum went mad at them. Told them they weren't allowed to make any more of it, and burned all the order forms. She's furious at them anyway. They didn't get as many owls as she expected. Owls were ordinary wizarding levels, the examinations Hogwarts students took at the age of 15. And then there was this big row, Ginny said. Because Mum wants them to go into the Ministry of Magic like Dad, and they told her all they want to do is open a joke shop. How do you pronounce that word? Row? Row? I've always said row, but then I heard it pronounced row. Row. Maybe it's row. I'll read that again. I'll read it the other way. You can pick which one you like better. And then there was this big row, Ginny said, because Mum wants them to go into the Ministry of Magic like Dad, and they told her, I stumbled on that the first time too, and they told her all they want to do is open a joke shop. Just then a door on the second landing opened, and a face poked out wearing horn-rimmed glasses and a very annoyed expression. Hi, Percy, said Harry. Oh, hello, Harry, said Percy. I was wondering who was making all the noise. I'm trying to work in here, you know. I've got a report to finish for the office, and it's rather difficult to concentrate when people keep thundering up and down the stairs. Maybe you should get your own place, Percy. You're an adult. Right? He graduated. Yes, he graduated. We're not thundering, said Ron irritably. We're walking. Sorry if we've disturbed the top-secret workings of the Ministry of Magic. What are you working on? Said Harry. I don't remember what he says, but I wrote a note here. You can't see that very well. I wrote a note here. I underlined the sentence. What are you working on? Said Harry. And I put, no, don't ask. I don't know why I did that. I don't know. A report for the Department of International Magical Cooperation, said Percy smugly. We're trying to standardize cauldron thickness. Some of these foreign imports are just a shade too thin. Leakages have been increasing at a rate of almost 3% a year. That'll change the world, that report will, said Ron. Front page of the Daily Prophet, I expect. Cauldron leaks. Percy went slightly pink. You might sneer, Ron, he said heatedly, but unless some sort of international law is imposed, we might well find the market flooded with flimsy, shallow-bottomed products that seriously endanger— Yeah, all right, said Ron, and he started off upstairs again. I guess I put no because I was like, you're gonna be so bored. Don't get him started. I don't know. It wasn't that bad. Percy slammed the bedroom door shut. As Harry, Hermione, and Ginny followed Ron up 3 more flights of stairs, shouts from the kitchen below echoed up to them. I can hear it from here. It sounded as though Mr. Weasley had told Mrs. Weasley about the toffees. The room at the top of the house where Ron slept looked much as it had the last time that Harry had come to stay. The same posters of Ron's favorite Quidditch team, the Chudley Cannons, were whirling and waving on the walls and sloping ceiling, and the fish tank on the windowsill, which had previously held frog spawn, now contained one extremely large frog. Ron's old rat Scabbers was here no more. I was about to say, wait a minute, why is he here? But he's not. But instead there was the tiny gray owl that had delivered Ron's letter to Harry in Privet Drive. It was hopping up and down in a small cage and twittering madly. Shut up, pig, said Ron, edging his way between 2 of the 4 beds that had been squeezed into the room. Fred and George are in here with us, because Bill and Charlie are in their room, he told Harry. Percy gets to keep his room all to himself because he's got to work. Right. Didn't Bill and Charlie have a room when they lived at the Burrow? Or did the Weasleys live somewhere else? What happened to their room? Maybe Ron and Ginny weren't born yet. I didn't think about that. Maybe. Huh. Why are you calling that owl Pig? Harry asked Ron. Because he's being stupid, said Ginny. Its proper name is Pigwidgeon. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Ginny is terrible at naming things. I love the girl to death, but she needs help. She does not name things very well. Pigwidgeon. Why? She names her Pygmy Puff Arnold. Again, why? And then all her kids, her middle kid's name is Albus Severus. Come on. There was this joke going around when the last book first came out where people were like, give these people a baby name book, please. They're unoriginal. I don't mind, having a Lily and a James. I get that, that makes sense, right? I'm totally cool with that. But Albus Severus, really? You couldn't make that his middle name or something? It didn't make any sense. I think Al, I think they call him Al. I think his first name should have been like Sirius, and then his middle name Albus Severus. That would have been way better. Anyway. Sorry. Well, I'll probably talk about that again later when we get there. Yeah, that's not a stupid name at all, said Ron sarcastically. Ginny named him, he explained to Harry. She reckons it's sweet, and I tried to change it, but it was too late. He won't answer to anything else. So now he's Pig. I've got to keep him up here because he annoys Errol and Hermes. He annoys me too, come to that. Pigwidgeon is adorable, though. Pigwidgeon zoomed happily around his cage, hooting shrilly. Harry knew Ron too well to take him seriously. He had moaned continually about his old rat, Scabbers, but had been most upset when Hermione's cat Crookshanks had appeared to have eaten him. Where's Crookshanks? Harry asked Hermione now. Out in the garden, I expect, she said. He likes chasing gnomes. He's never seen any before. Oh. A kitty chasing the gnomes. Percy's enjoying work, then, said Harry, sitting down on one of the beds and watching the Chudley cannon zooming in and out of the posters on the ceiling. That's really cool. Enjoying it, said Ron darkly. I don't reckon he'd come home if Dad didn't make him. He's obsessed. Just don't get him onto the subject of his boss. According to Mr. Crouch, and I was saying to Mr. Crouch, Mr. Crouch is of the opinion. Mr. Crouch was telling me. They'll be announcing their engagement any day now. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Okay. Yeah. Well, Percy and Mr. Crouch are very much alike. That does not surprise me that he's so fond of him. Doesn't he not get his name right though? I don't know. Have you had a good summer, Harry? Said Hermione. Did you get all food parcels and everything? Yeah, thanks a lot, said Harry. They saved my life, those cakes. And have you heard from... Ron began, but at a look from Hermione, he fell silent. Harry knew Ron had been about to ask about Sirius. Ron and Hermione had been so deeply involved in helping Sirius escape from the Ministry of Magic that they were almost as concerned about Harry's godfather as he was. However, discussing him in front of Ginny was a bad idea. Nobody but themselves and Professor Dumbledore knew about how Sirius had escaped or believed in his innocence. That's okay. Next book. A lot of people know. Not everybody, but a lot of people know. I think they've stopped arguing, said Hermione to cover the awkward moment, because Ginny was looking curiously from Ron to Harry. Shall we go down and help your mum with dinner? Yeah, all right, said Ron. The four of them... They just got there. The four of them left Ron's room and went back downstairs to find Mrs. Weasley alone in the kitchen, looking extremely bad-tempered. We're eating out in the garden, she said when they came in. There's just not enough room for 11 people in here. Could you take the plates outside, girls? Bill and Charlie are setting up the tables. I want to be there. I want to have a good Weasley dinner in the garden with the gnomes. I would love that. Knives and forks, please, you two, she said to Ron and Harry, pointing her wand a little more vigorously than she had intended at a pile of potatoes in the sink, which shot out of their skins so fast that they ricocheted off the walls and ceiling. Oh, that's cool. Oh, for heaven's sake, she snapped, now directing her wand at a dustpan, which hopped off the sideboard and started skating across the floor, scooping up the potatoes. Those two, she burst out savagely, now pulling pots and pans out of a cupboard, and Harry knew she meant Fred and George. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I really don't. No ambition, unless you count making as much trouble as they possibly can. Don't worry about them, Mrs. Weasley. Well, one of them is gonna have a bright future. Sorry I said anything. I forget. I really do. Let's not think about it. Anyway. Mrs. Weasley slammed a large copper saucepan down on the kitchen table and began to wave her wand around inside it. A creamy sauce poured from the wand tip as she stirred. Is it a sauce that she made previously? It would have to be. According to the law for elementary magic, you can't just have food appear magically. Food has to start somewhere. If you made it and you transport it with your wand or whatever, that's fine, but you can't just make it magically appear. According to Hermione, definitely how it is. To make things very inconvenient for them, I imagine. It's not as though they haven't got brains, she continued irritably, taking the saucepan over to the stove and lighting it with a further poke of her wand. But they're wasting them, and unless they pull themselves together soon, they'll be in real trouble. I've had more owls from Hogwarts about them than the rest put together. If they carry on the way they're going, they'll end up in the front of improper use of magic office. Mrs. Weasley jabbed her wand at the cutlery drawer, which shot open. Harry and Ron both jumped out of the way as several knives soared out of it, flew across the kitchen, and began chopping the potatoes, which had just been tipped back into the sink by the dustpan. Ew. You're gonna wash those, right? I hope so. I don't know where we went wrong with them, said Mrs. Weasley, putting down her wand and starting to pull out some more saucepans. It's been the same for years, one thing after another, and they won't listen to... Oh, not again! She had picked up her wand from the table and had emitted a loud squeak and turned into a giant rubber mouse. One of their fake wands again, she shouted. How many times have I told them not to leave them lying around? She grabbed her real wand and turned around to find that the sauce on the stove was smoking. Come on, Ron said hurriedly to Harry, seizing a handful of cutlery from the open drawer. Let's go and help Bill and Charlie. They left Mrs. Weasley and headed out the back door into the yard. They had only gone a few paces when Hermione's bandy-legged ginger cat Crookshanks came pelting out of the garden, bottle brush tail held high in the air, chasing what looked like a muddy potato on legs. Harry recognized it instantly as a gnome. Barely 10 inches high, its horny little feet pattered very fast as it sprinted across the yard and dived headlong into one of the Wellington boots that lay scattered around the door. Harry could hear the gnome giggling madly at Crookshanks as Crookshanks inserted a paw into the boot, trying to reach it. Meanwhile, a very loud crashing noise was coming from the other side of the house. The source of the commotion was revealed as they entered the garden and saw that Bill and Charlie both had their wands out and were making 2 battered old tables fly high above the lawn, smashing into each other, each attempting to knock the others out of the air. Boys. Fred and George were cheering, Ginny was laughing, and Hermione was hovering near the edge, apparently torn between amusement and anxiety. Bill's table caught Charlie with a huge bang and knocked one of its legs off. There was a clatter from overhead, and they all looked up to see Percy's head poking out of a window on the second floor. "Will you keep it down?" he bellowed. "Sorry, Percy," said Bill, grinning. "How are the cauldron bottoms going on?" "Very badly," said Percy peevishly, and he slammed the window shut. Chuckling, Bill and Charlie directed the tables safely onto the grass, end to end, and then with a flick of his wand, Bill reattached the table leg and conjured tablecloths from nowhere. By 7 o'clock, the two tables were groaning under dishes and dishes of Mrs. Weasley's excellent cooking, and the 9 Weasleys, Harry and Hermione, were settling themselves down to eat beneath a clear, deep blue sky. To somebody who had been living on meals of increasingly stale cake all summer, this was paradise. And at first Harry listened rather than talked, as he helped himself to chicken and ham pie, boiled potatoes and salad. Oh my gosh, that sounds so good. I haven't had supper yet. At the far end of the table, Percy was telling his father all about his report on Cauldron Bottoms. "I've told Mr. Crouch that I'll have it ready by Tuesday," Percy was saying pompously. "It's a bit sooner than he expected, but I like to keep on top of things. I think he'll be grateful I've done it in good time. I mean, he's extremely busy in our department just now, what with all the arrangements for the World Cup. We're just not getting the support we need from the Department of Magical Games and Sports. Ludo Bagman—" "I like Ludo," said Mr. Weasley mildly. "He was the one who got us good tickets for the Cup. I did him a bit of a favour. His brother, Odo, got into a spot of trouble, a lawnmower with unnatural powers. I smoothed the whole thing over." Alright, I got a lot of notes going on here. So, the names are really important in Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling really likes meaning behind most names. And the name Ludo Bagman means light and dirty money. And his brother Odo means wealthy. Do with that what you will. "Oh, Bagman's likeable enough, of course," said Percy dismissively, "but how he ever got to be head of department when I compare him to Mr. Crouch. I can't see Mr. Crouch losing a member of our department and not trying to find out what's happened to them. You realize Bertha Jorkins has been missing for over a month now, went on holiday to Albania and never came back? Well, we know what happened to her." And the name Bertha means bright, which is kind of a misnomer because she's not very bright, as we'll find. "Yes, I was asking Ludo about that," said Mr. Weasley, frowning. "He says Bertha's gotten lost plenty of times before now, though I must say if it was someone in my department, I'd be worried." "Oh, Bertha's hopeless, all right," said Percy. "I hear she's been shunted from department to department for years. Much more trouble than she's worth. But all the same, Bagman ought to be trying to find her. Mr. Crouch has been taking a personal interest. She worked in our department at one time, you know, and I think Mr. Crouch was quite fond of her. But Bagman just keeps laughing and saying she probably misread the map and ended up in Australia instead of Albania." However, Percy heaved an impressive sigh and took a deep swig of elderflower wine. Fancy. "We've got quite enough on our plates at the Department of International Magical Cooperation without trying to find members of other departments, too. As you know, we've got another big event to organize right after the World Cup." "We sure do." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Percy cleared his throat significantly and looked down toward the end of the table where Harry, Ron, and Hermione were sitting. "You know the one I'm talking about, Father." He raised his voice slightly. "The top secret one." He's really trying to be important, like, I know something you don't know, kind of thing. Ron rolled his eyes and muttered to Harry and Hermione, "He's been trying to get us to ask what that event is ever since he started work. Probably an exhibition of thick-bottomed cauldrons." In the middle of the table, Mrs. Weasley was arguing with Bill about his earring, which seemed to be a recent acquisition. "With a horrible great fang on it. Really, Bill, what do they say at the bank?" "Mum, no one at the bank gives a damn how I dress as long as I bring home plenty of treasure," said Bill patiently. "And your hair's getting silly, dear," said Mrs. Weasley, fingering her wand lovingly. "I wish you'd let me give it a trim." "I like it," said Ginny, who was sitting beside Bill. "You're so old-fashioned, Mum. Anyway, it's nowhere near as long as Professor Dumbledore's." "True, true." "Oh, hello." Next to Mrs. Weasley, Fred, George, and Charlie were all talking spiritedly about the World Cup. "It's got to be Ireland," said Charlie thickly, though through a mouthful of potato. "They flattened Peru in the semifinals." "Bulgaria has got Victor Krum, though," said Fred. "Crum's one decent player. Ireland has got 7, said Charlie shortly. "I wish England had got through." Had got through. That was embarrassing, that was. What happened? Said Harry eagerly, regretting more than ever his isolation from the wizarding world when he was stuck on Privet Drive. Went down to Transylvania 390 to 10, said Charlie gloomily. Shocking performance. And Wales lost to Uganda, and Scotland was slaughtered by Luxembourg. Harry had been on the Gryffindor house Quidditch team ever since his first year at Hogwarts, and owned one of the best racing brooms in the world, a Firebolt. Flying came more naturally to Harry than anything else in the magical world, and he played in the position of Seeker on the Quidditch house team. Mr. Weasley conjured up candles to light the darkening garden before they had their homemade strawberry ice cream. Oh, that sounds so good. And by the time they had finished, moths were fluttering low over the table, and the warm air was perfumed with the smells of grass and honeysuckle. Harry was feeling extremely well fed and at peace with the world as he watched several gnomes sprinting through the rose bushes, laughing madly and closely pursued by Crookshanks. Ron looked carefully up at the table to check that the rest of the family were all busy talking. Then he said very quietly to Harry, "So, have you heard from Sirius lately?" Hermione looked around, listening closely. "Yeah," said Harry softly, "twice. He sounds okay. I wrote to him yesterday. He might write back while I'm here." He suddenly remembered the reason he had written to Sirius, and for a moment was on the verge of telling Ron and Hermione about his scar hurting again, and about the dream that had awoken him. But he really didn't want to worry them just now, not when he himself was feeling so happy and peaceful. "Look at the time," Mrs. Weasley said suddenly, checking her wristwatch. "You really should be in bed, the whole lot of you. You'll be up at the crack of dawn to get to the cup. Harry, if you leave your school list out, I'll get your things for you tomorrow in Diagon Alley. I'm getting everyone else's. There might not be time after the World Cup. The match went on for 5 days last time." "Wow. Hope it does this time," said Harry enthusiastically. "Well, I certainly don't," said Percy sanctimoniously. "I shudder to think what the state of my in-tray would be if I was away from work for 5 days. "Yeah, someone might slip dragon dung in it again, eh, Percy?" said Fred. "That was a sample of fertilizer from Norway," said Percy, going very red in the face. "It was nothing personal." "It was," Fred whispered to Harry as they got up from the table. "We sent it." But that is the end of chapter 5. What a lovely chapter. Just having dinner at the Weasleys, different family. Yes, very exciting. Okay. But now it's time for my 15-minute break before we read chapter 6, The Portkey. I will remind you to talk in the chat or the comment section. I would love to hear from you. And please, if you're not a subscriber, click subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be notified the next time I upload or go live. I'll be going live next weekend, Friday and Saturday. Friday playing A Plague's Tale: Innocence and reading more Harry Potter on Saturday. If you want to know when I am streaming on those days, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon if you'd like to support me, or if you would like to read the writing that I do. I need to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what I recently posted. I will do that after the break. Patreon, yes. So, link in the description. You can check it out there. I also have a TikTok and an Instagram, also linked in the description. And I will see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. Okay, so I was just looking over chapter 6, and it's quite a short one. So this will be a relatively quick one. Oh, I almost forgot. I wanted to talk about my Patreon for a second. I posted a piece on my Patreon for this month, for the month of September 2022. And this one is free. It's free for everyone. And it is the prologue to a Harry Potter fanfiction I'm writing. It is called In Your Shoes. And it's actually a fanfiction I wrote in high school. But long story short, don't have it anymore. It's gone. So I'm rewriting it. Hopefully I'm going to make it better than it was the first time. But did I write the whole thing? I'm pretty sure I did. I think I wrote at least a rough draft of the whole thing at one point. But it's really good. It's a classic swap bodies fanfiction. If you're familiar with fanfiction, a lot of fans like to write instances where characters switch places with somebody else for a day, a sort of Freaky Friday situation. So in your shoes, Harry and Draco swap places for a while. It takes place during Half-Blood Prince, but in a sort of alternate universe where Draco isn't, his mission isn't to kill Dumbledore during the school year. He's like not officially a Death Eater yet, I don't think, or something. I don't know. But basically, Draco is especially mad at Harry because his father's in jail. And they just, well, they really get into it. They, I mean, like, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you already know that Harry and Draco don't get along at all. They're very, very much opposite beings. And then, so during a fight, Peeves the Poltergeist overhears them, and, well, he gets up to no good, and, they end up, switching places. You only get the prologue. That's all that's up right now on my Patreon, but I'm working on chapter 1. And because it's fanfiction, it's free, and fanfiction will always be free, all of it. I will be posting chapter 1, not next month, but the month after. I'm going to post it every other month, the next chapter every other month. So, if you want to see a preview of it, you can check out my TikTok or my Instagram. I posted a really fun video about it. Link in the description. If you want to see, I made some fan art of the novel. Nothing spoils it really, but I made a bunch of fan art, and that's featured in the video, and so you can kind of see what's to come. It's really fun, so check it out. Link in the description. Check it out on Patreon. Check out the video on my TikTok and my Instagram and all those things. I wonder if I could link that video. I probably could on my Patreon. Oh, I gotta check my email too. I keep forgetting to do that. I keep forgetting to do that. Okay, well, I'll do that later. So check it out. It's great. It's great stuff. Alright, Chapter 6, The Portkey. Harry felt as though he had barely lain down to sleep in Ron's room when he was being shaken awake by Mrs. Weasley. "Time to go, Harry dear," she whispered, moving away to wake Ron. Harry felt around for his glasses, put them on, and sat up. It was still dark outside. Ron muttered indistinctly as his mother roused him. At the foot of Harry's mattress, he saw 2 large, disheveled shapes emerging from tangles of blankets. "It's time already?" said Fred groggily. They dressed in silence, too sleepy to talk. Then, yawning and stretching, the 4 of them headed downstairs into the kitchen. Mrs. Weasley was stirring the contents of a large pot on the stove, while Mr. Weasley was sitting at the table checking a sheaf of large parchment tickets. He looked up as the boys entered and spread his arms so that they could see his clothes more clearly. He was wearing what appeared to be a golfing sweater and a very old pair of jeans, slightly too big for him, and held up with a large leather belt. "What do you think?" he asked anxiously. "We're supposed to go incognito. Do I look like a muggle, Harry?" "Yeah," said Harry, smiling. "Very good." "Where are Bill and Charlie and Percy?" said George, failing to stifle a huge yawn. "Well, they're apparating, aren't they?" said Mrs. Weasley, heaving the large pot over to the table and starting to ladle porridge into bowls, so they can have a bit of a lie-in. Harry knew that apparating meant disappearing from one place and reappearing almost instantly in another, but had never known any Hogwarts student to do it, and understood that it was very difficult. "So they're still in bed?" said Fred grumpily, pulling his bowl of porridge toward him. "Why can't we apparate too?" "Because you're not of age and you haven't passed your test," snapped Mrs. Weasley. "And where have those girls got to?" She bustled out of the kitchen, and they heard her climbing the stairs. Why can't they side-along apparate, though? That's my question. Yeah, wow. Well, the whole point of this is because J.K. Rowling wanted to introduce the concept of a portkey so it can be an important plot device later. So I imagine she's not going to attempt to explain that away. You have to pass a test to apparate? Harry asked. "Oh, yes," said Mr. Weasley, tucking the ticket safely into the back pocket of his jeans. "The Department of Magical Transportation has to fine a couple of people the other day for apparating without a license. It's not easy apparition, and when it's not done properly, it can lead to nasty complications. This pair I'm talking about went and splinched themselves." Oh, yeah. Equivalent to like a driving license. Yeah. That's what I wrote here on the page. That's what I was reading. Has apparating ever been mentioned before? I don't know. Probably the last book they talked about apparition. Anyway. Everyone around the table except Harry winced. Splinched? Said Harry. "They left half of themselves behind." "Maybe not half, part of them behind," said Mr. Weasley, now spooning large amounts of treacle onto his porridge. "So, of course, they were stuck. Couldn't move either way. Had to wait for the accidental magical reversal squad to sort them out." Oh, they literally left half of themselves behind. I misunderstood. Meant a fair old bit of paperwork, I can tell you. What with the muggles who spotted the body parts they'd left behind. Harry had a sudden vision of a pair of legs and an eyeball lying abandoned in the pavement of Privet Drive. "Were they okay?" he asked, startled. "Oh, yes," said Mr. Weasley, matter-of-factly. "But they got a heavy fine, and I don't think they'll be trying it again in a hurry. You don't mess around with apparition. There are plenty of adult wizards who don't bother with it. Prefer brooms. Slower, but safer. But Bill and Charlie and Percy can all do it." "Charlie had to take the test twice," said Fred, grinning. "He failed the first time. Apparated 5 miles south of where he meant to. Right on top of some poor old dear doing her shopping, remember?" "Yes, well, he passed the second time," said Mrs. Weasley, marching back into the kitchen amid hearty sniggers. "Percy only passed 2 weeks ago," said George. "He's been apparating downstairs every morning since just to prove it. Just to prove he can." There were footsteps down the passageway, and Hermione and Ginny came into the kitchen, both looking pale and drowsy. "Why do we have to be up so early?" Ginny said, rubbing her eyes and sitting down at the table. "We've got a bit of a walk," said Mr. Weasley. "Walk?" said Harry. "What, are we walking to the World Cup?" No, that's miles away," said Mr. Weasley, smiling. "We only need to walk a short way. It's just that it's very difficult for a large number of wizards to congregate without attracting Muggle attention. We have to be very careful about how we travel at the best of times, and on a huge occasion like the Quidditch World Cup—" "George!" said Mrs. Weasley sharply, and they all jumped. "What?" said George, in an innocent tone that deceived nobody. "What is that in your pocket?" "Nothing." "Don't you lie to me." Mrs. Weasley pointed her wand at George's pocket and said, "Accio," and again, introducing the Accio spell, because that's also going to be important later. Several small, brightly colored objects zoomed out of George's pocket. He made a grab for them but missed, and they sped right into Mrs. Weasley's outstretched hand. "We told you to destroy them," said Mrs. Weasley furiously, holding up what was unmistakably more Tun-Tung toffees. "We told you to get rid of the lot. Empty your pockets. Go on, both of you." It was an unpleasant scene. The twins had evidently been trying to smuggle as many toffees out of the house as possible, and it was only by using her summoning charm that Mrs. Weasley managed to find them all. Accio! 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 She shouted, and toffees zoomed from all sorts of unlikely places, including the lining of George's jacket and the turn-ups of Fred's jeans. We spent 6 months developing those, Fred shouted at his mother as she threw the toffees away. Oh, a fine way to spend 6 months, she shrieked. No wonder you didn't get more owls. All in all, the atmosphere was not very friendly as they took their departure. Mrs. Weasley was still glowering as she kissed Mr. Weasley on the cheek, though not nearly as much as the twins, who had each hoisted their rucksacks onto their backs and walked out without a word to her. Well, have a lovely time, said Mrs. Weasley, and behave yourselves, she called after the twins' retreating backs, but they did not look back or answer. I'll send Bill, Charlie, and Percy along around midday, Mrs. Weasley said to Mr. Weasley as he, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny set off across the dark yard after Fred and George. It was chilly and the moon was still out. Only a dull greenish tinge along the horizon to their right showed that daybreak was drawing closer. Harry, having been thinking about thousands of wizards speeding toward the Quidditch World Cup, sped up to walk with Mr. Weasley. So how does everyone get there without all the muggles noticing? He asked. It's been a massive organizational problem, sighed Mr. Weasley. Excuse me. The trouble is, about 100,000 wizards turn up at the World Cup, and of course we just haven't got a magical site big enough to accommodate them all. There are places muggles can't penetrate, but imagine trying to pack 100,000 wizards into Diagon Alley, or Platform 9 3/4. So we had to find a nice deserted moor, and set up as many anti-muggle precautions as possible. The whole ministry has been working on it for months. First, of course, we had to stagger the arrivals. People with cheaper tickets have to arrive 2 weeks beforehand. Oh my goodness. Just clear out your calendar. A limited number use Muggle transport, but we can't have too many clogging up their buses and trains. Remember, wizards are coming from all over the world. Some apparate, of course, but we have to set up safe points for them to appear well away from Muggles. I believe there's a handy wood they're using. Oh, like forest. They're using as the apparition point. For those who don't want to apparate, or can't, we use portkeys. They're objects that are used to transport wizards from one spot to another at a prearranged time. They can be any seemingly innocent object, like a football or a dolphin. You can do large groups at a time if you need to. There have been 200 portkeys placed at strategic points around Britain, and the nearest one to us is up at the top of Stout's Head Hill. So that's where we're headed. Mr. Weasley pointed ahead of them, where a large black mass rose beyond the village of Ottery St. Catchpole. What sort of objects are portkeys? Said Harry curiously. Oh, but I already said this quote. Well, not this quote. Well, they can be anything, said Mr. Weasley. Unobtrusive things, obviously, so muggles don't go picking them up and playing with them. Stuff they just think is litter. They trudged down the dark, dank lane toward the village, the silence broken only by their footsteps. The sky lightened very slowly as they made their way through the village, its inky blackness diluting to deepest blue. Harry's hands and feet were freezing. Mr. Weasley kept checking his watch. They didn't have breath to spare for talking as they began to climb Stout's Head Hill, stumbling occasionally in hidden rabbit holes, slipping on thick black tuffets of grass. Each breath Harry took was sharp in his chest, and his legs were starting to seize up, when at last his feet felt level ground. Whew! Panted Mr. Weasley, taking off his glasses and wiping them on his sweater. Well, we've made good time. We've got 10 minutes. Hermione came over the crest of the hill last, clutching a stitch in her side. Now we just need the portkey, said Mr. Weasley, replacing his glasses and squinting around on the ground. It won't be big. Come on. They spread out, searching. They had only been at it for a couple of minutes, however, when a shout rent the still air. Over here, Arthur! Over here, son! We've got it! 2 tall figures were silhouetted against the starry sky on the other side of the hilltop. Amos! Said Mr. Weasley, smiling as he strode over to the man who had shouted. The rest of them followed. Mr. Weasley was shaking hands with a ruddy-faced wizard with a scrubby brown beard, who was holding a moldy-looking old boot in his other hand. "This is Amos Diggory, everyone," said Mr. Weasley. "He works for the Department of the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, and I think you know his son, Cedric." Cedric Diggory was an extremely handsome boy of around 17. He was captain and seeker of the Hufflepuff House Quidditch team at Hogwarts. "Hi," said Cedric, looking around at them all. Everybody said hi back except Fred and George, who merely nodded. They'd never quite forgiven Cedric for beating their team, Gryffindor, in the first Quidditch match of the previous year. "Long walk, Arthur?" Cedric's father asked. "Not too bad," said Mr. Weasley. "We live just on the other side of the village there. You?" "Had to get up at 2, didn't we, Ced? I tell you, I'll be glad when he's got his apparition test." "Yeah, about that. Still, not complaining. Quidditch World Cup. Wouldn't miss it for a sack full of galleons. And the tickets cost about that. Mind you, looks like I got off easy." Amos Diggory peered good-naturedly around at the 3 Weasley boys, Harry, Hermione, and Ginny. "All these yours, Arthur?" "Oh, no, only the redheads," said Mr. Weasley, pointing out his children. "This is Hermione, friend of Ron's, and Harry, another friend." "Merlin's beard," said Amos Diggory, his eyes widening. "Harry? Harry Potter?" Yeah," said Harry. Harry was used to people looking curiously at him when they met him, used to the way their eyes moved at once to the lightning scar on his forehead, but it always made him feel uncomfortable. "Ced's talked about you, of course," said Amos Diggory. "Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, Ced, that'll be something to tell your grandchildren. Okay, I'm gonna need to read that again. I had a pang of sadness. I gotta read that again. Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, Ced, that'll be something to tell your grandchildren, that will. You beat Harry Potter." Harry couldn't think of any reply to this, so he remained silent. Fred and George were both scowling again. Cedric looked slightly embarrassed. "Harry fell off his broom, Dad," he muttered. "I told you. It was an accident." "Yes, but you didn't fall off, did you?" roared Amos, genially, slapping his son on his back. "Always modest, Aris said. Always the gentleman. But the best man won. I'm sure Harry'd say the same, wouldn't you, eh? One falls off his broom, one stays on. You don't need to be a genius to tell which one's the better flyer." Let him have it. There's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to strangle him. But then I remember, and I'm just like, let him have it. He's proud of his son. Let him have it. Let him enjoy it. It's so brief. It's so, just let it go. "Must be nearly time," said Mr. Weasley quickly, pulling out his watch again. "Do you know whether we're waiting for any more, Amos?" "No, the Lovegoods have been there for a week already, and the Fawcett's couldn't get tickets," said Mr. Diggory. "There aren't any more of us in this area, are there?" "Not that I know of," said Mr. Weasley. "Yes, it's a minute off. We'd better get ready." Yay, the Lovegoods! I love that the Lovegoods are mentioned before we meet them. That's awesome. Next book. And you could argue that the reason why we haven't heard of Luna until now is because she's not actually in Harry, Ron, and Hermione's year. She's in Ginny's year. She's a third year this year. So they wouldn't really cross paths, really. He looked around at Harry and Hermione. "You just need to touch the Portkey, that's all. A finger will do." With difficulty, owing to their bulky backpacks, the 9 of them crowded around the old boot held out by Amos Diggory. 2, 1. It happened immediately. Harry felt as though a hook just behind his navel had been suddenly jerked irresistibly forward. His feet left the ground. He could feel Ron and Hermione on either side of him, their shoulders banging into his. They were all speeding forward in a howl of wind and swirling color. His forefinger was stuck to the boot as though it was pulling him magically onward. And then his feet slammed to the ground. Ron staggered into him and he fell over. The Portkey hit the ground near his head with a heavy thud. Harry looked up. Mr. Weasley, Mr. Diggory, and Cedric were still standing, though looking very windswept. Everybody else was on the ground. 7 past 5 from Stouthead Hill, said a voice. And that's the end of the chapter. It's really short. But still a good chapter nonetheless. Next week, we'll be reading at chapter 7, Bagman and Crouch. Not the most interesting of chapters, I don't remember. I don't really care about those characters. Does anybody like Ludo Bagman or Mr. Crouch? I feel like they're just, like throwaway characters. Don't really care. And then we'll read chapter 8, the Quidditch World Cup, which is a really good chapter. So, tune in next week. But that'll be the end of the stream. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please continue to talk in the comments. Leave a comment on the stream. I read them and respond to them. And if you are not a subscriber, click subscribe and click the notification bell icon so you can be notified the next time I go live, the next time I upload. I'll be going live next week on Friday. If you want to know what time, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon. If you haven't heard me say it 2 or 3 times earlier. I feel like I say it a lot. I write on Patreon. If you want to support me, you can support me on, you can click on the link in my description, support me on Patreon, and you can also read the writing that I leave on there. But some of it is free, so if you can't afford to be a patron, check it out anyway. There's plenty of free stuff for you to read, especially my fan fiction, which I just posted last week or the week before, this month. Check it out. Also in the description, my TikTok and my Instagram. Check those out too. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye.